fabled heat, where magic meets desire. Subscribe to ignite the fantasy.
I pressed my forehead against the cool, reinforced glass of the Ethelred's observation deck, watching the Valkyrie glide through the violet storms of Xylos Prime. The storm was a living thing, torrents of electric lavender that crackled against the hull, each flash painting the metal with a fleeting hue before it was swallowed by darkness. The ship's hull sang beneath my fingertips, a low, steady hum that reminded me I was still alive, that the steel around me still remembered the rhythm of my heartbeat. Captain Kaela Voss stood beside me, her uniform clinging to the curve of her shoulders, the fabric catching the faint bioluminescent glow that pulsed through the vessel's veins. The light traced the seams of her armor like veins of liquid moonlight, and I could see the faint tremor in her jaw as she fought the cold that seeped through the deck. Her hand found my wrist, warm and urgent, and I felt the heat of her pulse thrum against my skin, a reminder that she was as human as the fear that knotted in my gut. 5% oxygen, she murmured, eyes flickering with a strange silver light that seemed to draw the storm's own electricity into them. We're losing pressure in the aft bay. I swallowed, the stale air tasting like rusted hope, like metal that had been left too long in the rain. My throat was dry, my tongue heavy. We need to seal the bulkhead, I said, voice barely more than a breath, each syllable a fragile filament in the vacuum of the ship. She turned to me, her gaze locking onto mine, irises igniting like twin moons. In that instant, the world narrowed to the space between us. The silver fire danced across her cheekbones, tracing the line of her jaw, and a surge of longing rose in my chest, hot enough to drown the fear. I could see the faint scar that ran from the base of her ear to the hollow of her throat, a reminder of battles fought in the dark. Lyra, she whispered, the name slipping from her lips like a promise. I'm not human. The words hung between us, charged with something older than the storm outside. I felt the heat of her breath on my cheek, the electric tremor of her pulse against my skin, and the world seemed to tilt on its axis. The hull shuddered, a metallic sigh, and the warning lights flickered to a frantic red. Then what are we? I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of terror and desire. She smiled, a thin, fierce curve that lit the darkness in her eyes. We are the only thing that still feels real. The bulkhead alarms blared and the ship's emergency seals began to close. I could feel the pressure dropping, the air thinning, each inhalation a bite of cold steel. Kaela's hand tightened around my wrist, her fingers digging into my flesh as if to anchor me to the present. Come with me, she said, pulling me toward the narrow maintenance tunnel that led to the engine core. The corridor was a claustrophobic tunnel of humming conduits and pulsing lights. My heart hammered against my ribs, matching the rhythm of the ship's failing systems. We reached the core chamber just as the oxygen levels hit 3%. The room glowed with a soft, otherworldly luminescence, the core's plasma veins throbbing like a living heart. Kaela turned, her silver irises blazing brighter than ever, casting a cold fire that painted my skin with frost-kissed patterns. Lyra, I can give you more than breath, she whispered, her voice a low caress that vibrated through my bones. I can give you eternity. The temptation surged through me, a tidal wave of heat and longing. I could feel the heat of her body against mine, the electric charge of her magic seeping into my veins. In that moment, the choice was no longer about survival, it was about surrender. I leaned in, feeling the heat of her mouth brush my own, the taste of metal and starlight mingling on our tongues. Our kiss was a collision of fire and ice, a promise that defied the dying ship and the dying universe. When we finally pulled apart, the alarms fell silent, the hull steadied, and the oxygen gauge began to climb. The storm outside still raged, but inside the Ethelred, a new kind of light burned, one forged from two hearts that refused to be extinguished. We stood together hand in hand, watching the violet tempest swirl beyond the viewport. The universe might be a lie, but the truth of our love was as real as the breath in our lungs. And as the ship's engines hummed back to life, I knew that whatever darkness lay ahead, we would face it together, forever bound by silver fire and the heat of our shared longing.